Hello students. Uh, we had already discussed about the topics of dimensional analysis and vectors. So these are two chapters which we have completed. But even before these chapters in your book, you should find certain chapters on significant figures, errors, units and measurement. And though not a lot of questions are asked from these chapters, I believe that you should have a basic idea about this. So in the first chapter in your book, you shall be finding something like role of physics, or what is the connection of physics to the other branches of science and so on. Now, though I should have made this video that I am making today earlier, this should have been the first video when you started studying this fascinating subject in class 11, but better late than never. So what is this physics? So what is this science? So well, the word science, it is derived from a Latin verb. And that Latin verb is scientia. That's the Latin verb. And what does it mean? It means to know. Very simple, right? To know. That's all science is. To know. To know the truth. To find out the truth. To discover that what are the hidden laws which are at work in nature. That's what science is all about. And what is this physics? How did this word derive? I do not exactly know the word from which it derived, but physics means to do with nature. That's what physics means. So as you can see that, well, science means to know and physics means to do with nature. So together, what we call physics today is actually a part of a subject which is called the physical sciences. And this physical sciences means to know what is happening in nature. That's what physics is all about. You will also find other branches like chemistry, biology, mathematics, but it is physics which literally transforms to this meaning to know about nature. Even chemistry, biology, they are also studying about nature, but this particular subject, in its word, in the name itself, it has got nature. That's why there are so many fascinating outlets in the area of physics. Now if you ask me that what is the most oldest form of science, you can ask this, like, when did people actually start doing science? This scientific method, when did it start? Well, I don't exactly, or I can't exactly say that when physics started, but as for me, I believe that the oldest form of science will have to be astronomy, I believe. Well, maybe it was not called astronomy at that point of time, but I think that astronomy is the oldest form of science. Because if you look at the forefathers, like our caveman, the Homo neanderthalensis men, the Homo australis men, the men from which we Homo sapiens have evolved, all of them looked up at the stars. The cavemen, they lived in caves. They were groups of hunters and gatherers. They hunted animals, feasted upon them. It was not until the end of the Stone Age that they even discovered wheel or fire or other kind of inventions which changed the course of life, or say agriculture and farming, domestication of animals. Even before man invented these vital aspects of life, they had already started looking into the night sky, into the stars. They believed that what's happening up there has got a connection with what is happening down here. And well, that's true. Today we have all these mobile phones, the digital calendars, even the hand-printed calendars telling us what day of the week it is, what is today's date, in which year we are living. But think about this, men. They did not have any such devices or instruments or any such method to keep them updated what they did is they looked up to the sky. They studied the motion of the sun, the motion of the stars. They identified different shapes among the stars, which we call constellations. Which constellation is rising from the east or which is rising from the north, during which time of the year, gave them information whether it is going to rain or whether it's going to snow or whether it's going to be the scorching heat. And as a result, they could adapt themselves. And all this they could do because they knew nature well. They lived very close to nature. So these are the cavemen, the oldest form of human lives with which we have some similarity. And even they looked up into the stars. They documented them. They did not document them in some kind of computers, but they documented them in the form of cave paintings. They wrote it on the stone tablets. From there, we came to know about all this. So therefore, I will say that astronomy is the oldest form of science, and by observing what's happening up in the heavens, we got to know a lot about what's happening down here. Look at this law. You know this. This is the Newton's law of gravitation, the universal law of gravitation. Do you know how this law came into being? Well, even before Newton proposed this law, there was this gentleman by the name of Tycho Brahe. So Tycho Brahe was one of those men who had interests in a lot of fields, one of them being astronomy, and he was a very rich, wealthy person, so he could afford to build the best observatories or buy the best telescopes in those days. And with that, he observed the night sky. He took data and data, pages after pages of data. He observed the night sky day after day. But whatever data he collected, he never tried to analyze them, that what is the law that connects all of this. And that was done by this man, Johannes Kepler. So Kepler was that man who somehow managed to, after a lot of struggle, get hold of the data that Brahe had accumulated. And from those data, Kepler gave his 3 laws of planetary motion. You will be studying those laws in this year. But after Kepler gave those laws, Kepler said that yes, planets move around the sun in ellipses. Why? Why does the planets move around the sun in ellipses? That was the obvious question. Kepler could deduce from the data of Brahe that they did move in ellipses, but why? And till today, we don't know why. But when Newton came up with the universal law of gravitation, it was simply a hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? Well, hypothesis is basically, it's like a proposition where you assume that it is true, and then you try to see that whether whatever you have proposed, whatever you have assumed, if it is matching with the data, if it's matching with your observation, and if it does, well, that becomes a law. So this universal law of gravitation, Newton said, well fine, the planets move in ellipses because the force acting between the sun and the planet is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the distance squared. That's why they move in ellipses. As simple as that. Newton said it, and he found, not only he but even the other generation of scientists after him found that the data that they collected whenever they studied the heavens matched with this particular formula, the Newton's law of gravity. But no one can prove, no one can tell from where this formula came. If you are asked to derive this formula, that you cannot do. Similarly, there is something called axioms. So axioms are something which are generally considered to be true, and then you build upon them. So suppose this is an axiom. What is an axiom? 2 parallel lines never meet with each other. 2 parallel lines will never intersect. And based on this axiom, you can form a lot of other postulates, a lot of other theorems. But why does 2 parallel lines never meet? Or can you prove it? Well, we don't know. So that is the reason why hypothesis or axioms is so important in this process of science. We also have something that's known as models, the scientific models. And what is a model? When we are studying something which we cannot actually perceive with the five senses that we have, what we do is we try to form a model. The best example of a model that I can provide to you is when we studied the atomic structure. So the atomic structure, how did the entire theory of atomic structure develop? Well, initially it was this gentleman by the name of Sir J.J. Thomson, and J.J. Thomson came up with something known as the plum pudding model, that there is a sea of positive charge and inside which these electrons are scattered just like plums in a pudding. That was the plum pudding model. For the observations of his time, the plum pudding model seemed to be accurate. But later on, Rutherford came up with another model. He said, well, the positive charge cannot be scattered like this. I have done the gold foil experiment and I know positive charge is situated somewhere here in the middle, and that the negative charges are pretty far away from the positive charges, and that an atom is mostly empty. That is what Rutherford said. But okay, fine, the positive charge is concentrated in a small place, negative charge is far from it and it's empty. But how are the negative charges distributed? His model could not explain that. Then we move on to what is known as the Bohr model. And Bohr model said, well, the nucleus of an atom is much like the sun of our solar system, and the planets, the way they move around the sun, electrons move around the nucleus in a similar manner. This was the Bohr model. But if you look into more depth, if you look into the quantum studies today, what does the quantum study says? Well, quantum study says, yes, there is something like a seat of positive charge, there is something like a nucleus, but electrons, they don't move around the positive charges, they don't move around the nucleus in such specific orbits. Rather, there is a foggy, a cloudy area around the nucleus. It's much like the clouds of our sky. And then that the electrons, they simply appear and disappear from one orbit to another. So suppose, as per the Bohr model, if this is the cation, the electron is moving in the cation, suddenly it disappears and starts moving in the L shell. And then after moving for some time in the L shell, say it again disappears and starts moving in the M shell. It moves in the M shell and suddenly whoosh, it disappears. It releases an energy E, which is equal to h mu, Planck's constant times frequency. And after that you again find it here moving in the cation. So there is no definite path in which the electron moves. It simply appears and reappears in the various areas of this entire electron cloud. That is the present picture. All of these are scientific models. Even no one can say with certainty whether this is correct. Maybe in 50 years from today we will have an even more accurate model. So this is another way in which science works. You look into the models, you build models, and then you check whether the experiments or the observations that you are making, they are matching with the model, the predictions, the postulates of the model. In a similar manner, the structure of DNA was proposed by Watson and Crick. Initially it was simply a model,